everything from now till the end of the book. Is this volume okay? Too loud, too soft?
That's good.
So everything from now to the end of the book is quite unique. This whole explanation of the Great Depression you're seeing here is the only one like this. It's based on a paradigm shift. It's very different. And so when the editor sent the book to Lucas from Chicago, who got the Nobel Prize somewhere in the 90s, I was terrified because this guy is ferocious. Look, Chicago economists are just terrifying. They tear you to pieces. They're trained to be that way. They are all vicious except Milton Friedman, who was sweet and kind. The rest are trained to be in your face and very aggressive. And so when they said that, I was thinking, oh man, because it's a little different explanation. And he liked it. So there's a comment early on the first page, so I went, wow, he made it. That was terrifying. All right, so Great Depression. We're going to do a paradigm shift. Stay with me now. Paradigm shift number 1. Maximum power. The agony of the Great Depression. Oh, how did you do in the cycle of one, Adam Smith? I'm dying to read your homeworks. Did you come up with some good ones? Good. I look forward to that. Did you come up with a new topic for me? I asked for suggestions for Adam Smith. Do you have one that I didn't list? I'm just curious. Anyone had any that I didn't list? I gave you some topics, and then I said anything else?
I had one, forgive me if you didn't know, but in terms of you looked at it from the employee side of how to get your employers to not call you back to the office, and I looked at it from the employer side, how to get people to come back to the office.
How to get them back to the office. I sensed that last time. You were on the other side. That's a lonely place to be right now. Also the ESG, ethical, social. How do you do that? Is that for real? Billions and trillions are being thrown into ESG. It's the big hot button. But the thing is, throwing money in that sector, will you actually get ESG? So that would happen. Anything else that I didn't mention? I'm just curious. Any new hot button? Did you use the topics I gave you then? Did you do the homework? Okay. Leah, what's wrong?
I didn't see your topics,
So Leah, should I just hang around you? Oh, okay. Okay. So here we are. So, okay, good. So you used all my topics then. Nothing new? Okay. So here we go. The model they thought they were in. Model paradigm. They thought they were in. An actual model after paradigm shift. And the diagrams are all a little out of sequence, so all that has been fixed in the new edition. So, hopefully, after the paradigm shift. Okay, so here we are, let's do this. It's now 1929, and the roaring 20s are almost over. Life has been good for 10 years or more. Full employment, it's the age of innovation. Everyone's happy. World War I is over. The hyperinflation never came here. So great place, roaring 20s, great world. Which model were they in then? The classical model. So they were in the classical model. Here we are, the classical aggregate supply curve. Py space. And draw the aggregate demand up here. AD0, P0. And so this was, this was at Y natural rate, Y natural, these are all percentages, okay? So this was the natural rate, full employment, natural rate, laissez-faire, leave it alone, full employment, no such thing as unemployment. Stock market was going higher and higher and higher, and there were sap bubbles like you wouldn't believe. So here we are, the market's getting sap bubbly, and in this world, you could do margin calls. So you could borrow on margin, which meant that in the roaring 20s, if a stock cost $100, you could borrow 90, put down 10, and you could play with the big boys and girls. So you could borrow 90% on margin. And it was just a national pastime. You had children's magazines, ladies' magazines, men, retired women, all talking about the stock market. There were songs on the stock market. There were songs about falling in love with your broker. I'll send you a PBS movie, like a 1-hour thing called Crash of 29. Tons of songs there were astrologers, astronomers making forecasts about the stock market. Gwendolyn Williams was one of them, who was like this guru. So people would go and she would look at the stars and she would tell you what to buy, what not to buy. So working like we do was old-fashioned. The real money was in investing in the stock market. And so you had the big boys and girls playing in the big league, and then the rest of us acting like we were big boys and girls, borrowing 90%. So here we are, we're all trying to jump in on this show, and it's a good show. And the stock market's going up, and the world is good. Then in 1929, the crash was in October, we know that. But when the market crashed in October, it wasn't at its high. It had already started losing air, please note. So in March or April, I can never remember, the market crashed. The bubble went. And suddenly what happened is, the big boys and girls pushed a guy called Dick Whitney, 6 foot something. He was part of one of the big investment houses. They pushed him out on the floor of the stock exchange, said, Dick, go save the crash. And so in March or April, Dick Whitney went on the floor of the stock exchange and single-handedly stopped the crash. Single-handedly, everyone was panicking, and single-handedly he went, 100,000 shares of RCA, 150,000 shares of Standard Oil. And everyone said, oh, Dick Whitney is buying. Dick Whitney is buying. And so everybody said, let's stop panicking. He's buying, let's jump back in. And so single-handedly, Dick Whitney stopped the stock market crash. He became a national hero the next day. But what was happening all before this crash was there was something called painting the tape. Which today, and this tape is ticker tape. It's the ticker tape, the stock quotes. Today it's called pump and dump. Enron. It's the same thing. Nothing has changed, by the way. No amount of regulation can stop the bad boys on Wall Street from being bad. Sarbanes-Oxley is a joke. SOX compliance is a joke. I was sitting there with this lady from certain insurance company, telling me how in 3 minutes the bad boys and girls could go around SOX compliance. You cannot legislate good behavior. We know that now. There'll be 51-foot walls. It has to pay to be good. That's a really subtle and powerful point. I'm repeating it. So, pump and dump, painting the tape, this is how it worked. 3 of us are tycoons, you know? And so what we do is we buy Standard Oil. I buy Standard Oil, I'm Morgan. I buy Standard Oil for 25. I'm gonna sell it to this tycoon here. He sells it to her. She sells it back to me. And the price is going 25, 32, 48, 55. And we go back and forth. And there's lots of activity. And all the newspapers, all, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, International Herald Tribune, Washington Post, they were all on the tape. So the reporters were told, you know, hey, come over to the office and there's an envelope waiting for you. Write a nice article on Standard Oil. So now we're at 55, we are 3 tycoons. So now there's this big article on Standard Oil. I'm just making up a name. The blue sky is ahead for Standard Oil. Future is unlimitless. Stock price went from 32 to 55 and lots more too. Now the moms and pops, the non-tycoons start jumping in. 56, 57, 62, price is going up. What are the 3 tycoons doing around 63, 65? They get out. And so sometime in March or April, 3 or 4 of these tycoons, JP Morgan and people like that, they made 120 million in a week, which in those days was ridiculously large amounts of money. So there was lots of painting the tape, which is the ticker tape. Today it's called pump and dump. So lots of problems, lots of artificial sad bubbling. Anyway, so that's in March. Then the market stabilizes and slowly starts leaking. The air starts going out of the balloon. October, Thursday, Friday, and then Monday, Tuesday, 29th was the last day. 4 days, the market crashes over 4 days. And Winston Churchill actually happened to be there by sheer fluke on the last day, the big day. He just chose that day to be a tourist. So that's in his biography, where he's seeing the madness that's happening. And so market starts crashing finally in October. The week before, they asked the astrologer, Evangeline Adams, what do you see? She said, well, shh, wait. Oh, wait a minute. Oh yeah, okay. Blue skies ahead, bye. And so that's what she said. So the market starts crashing, and again they send Dick Whitney up. Dick, go. Start buying. Loud voice, with confidence. So that he again goes out. And Dick Whitney was this classic guy, the kind of guy where the handkerchief sticks out of the pocket and matches the tie. Those kind of guys. That matches the belt, that matches the socks. Annoying people like that. So he was like that, suave, sophisticated. So he goes back on. And now it's October, and he goes, 150,000 Standard Oil, International Harvester, 200,000. And if you look at the collapse in prices, they stabilize. People go, hey, Dick's fine. And then after a few minutes, the hell with that. And the whole thing came crashing down. So by the time the day was over, Standard Oil, $150 in the morning, 12 cents at the end of the day. By the way, so here I was doing this, and in New Brunswick in the evening class, somebody just walked in to hear just this. And the guy almost fainted. He must have had a position in Standard Oil. He said, what? Sit down, this is 1929, not today. I'll never forget that. International Harvester, $120 in the morning, 15 cents. End of day. And no buyers. And back in the day, we had students whose relatives and grandparents were alive then. Sadly, they're mostly gone. And so I have all these stories. One of them said, I talked to my grandfather, who was a broker, and he said you couldn't walk on the floor of the stock exchange because you would sink in. The buy slips were green, I think, and sell were red. And actually somebody gave me the old slips. But you would sink in, they were so deep. It was like walking through a marsh or a swamp. Another student said that his grandfather told him that that night, people didn't go home. The brokers, people on Wall Street, they got in the subway and they went round and round, back and forth. They couldn't look at each other. They dare not go home because when they went home, they would have to explain at home that it was all gone. Whole life savings gone. And so this student's grandfather said, I was one of them, not a word. Till morning, we went back and forth, round and round. We couldn't leave the train, we couldn't go home. There was a student in my class, some quick anecdotes, whose grandfather was a doctor. Victoria, like our Victoria. And so he was a doctor who would do good things, save people, and if they couldn't afford it, he was the kind of doctor who would say, you know what, when you bake a pie, give me a slice. Send me some veggies. Don't worry about it. He was that kind of doctor. And so 3 or 4 days before the crash, someone calls him, anonymous call, and says, Doctor, whatever, please get out of the stock market. Please, I know what I'm talking about. You helped me out some years ago. Now I'm helping you. Please get out. And he hangs up. And the doctor was just, he knew the voice, he couldn't place it, but it was so insistent that he said, here, I'm going to sell. And he sells, pretty much at top. So stories like this abound. There was one guy who refused to get sucked into the SAP bubble, and that was the biggest crook in the world, Al Capone. So the mafioso of mafiosos. So he was not in the stock market at all. He was in gambling, prostitution, alcohol, drugs, but not in the stock market. And they said, everyone's in the stock market. The tycoons, the newspaper boys, you know, the shopkeepers are put. How come you're not in the stock market? And Al Capone famously said, those brokers, bunch of crooks. This is Al Capone. And so the market crashes. Finally on the Tuesday, comes plunging down, and you folks tell me what happens next. Immediately, what happens in this world when the market comes plunging down? One last thing, Groucho Marx. You know Groucho Marx? Marx Brothers? Solomon, you haven't seen the Marx Brothers? Has anyone seen the Marx Brothers? Then don't worry about the story. Well, he was a comedian, very abstemious. I'll send you a link, you've seen him. And so he never wasted. He was the kind of guy who was brought up, really grew up poor, so when he went from one room to another, he would turn off this light, he would turn on that light. Then he would get the book from that room, he'd turn that light off and turn this one back on. Few months before the crash, a broker from White Plains said, Groucho, put all your money in the stock market. And so he did that. Next morning he calls his broker and he says, what happened? And, oh, Groucho, your life savings? Oh, it's all gone. And so that's part of the video. So here we are, what happens now? Let's do it, the market has crashed, completely gone, and please understand, when this baby crashed, it didn't come back up like it does today. You know, now it comes back up in 2 weeks, 10 days. It was the 50s, early 60s, when this baby came back up. All right? So what happens right away? Jessica?
Unemployment.
Yeah, but before that, immediately the markets collapsed. Which variable tanks?
Unmanned.
What?
Confidence. I mean, the AD would drop, correct?
Yeah, tell me why AD would drop.
Oh,
Yes,
consumer confidence.
C-bar and I-bar goes. There we are, move number one, bang. Move one, C-bar down, I-bar down as market crashes. P0 falls to P1. this is happening. So I'm just doing it episodically, but this is happening continuously. So right up front, folks, mistake number one. We actually made 4 policy mistakes. 4. Incredible. It's almost like we were really trying, this would have been a bad market correction, a big market correction. It became the Great Depression because we just made these huge mistakes that made the patient worse with 4 mistakes. So mistake number 1, Hoover enacts wage floor. So here we go, Hoover. So let's talk about this. So prices start falling. So as prices fell, what should have happened to wages? As P fell, since classical model, and what does it mean by classical model? What's the assumption in the classical model?
Wages and P move together.
Thank you. Since classical model, percentage change in P should equal percentage change in capital W. W0 should fall to W1. So that's what should happen, and we kind of briefly talked about it. So here comes Hoover, and he was a great engineer, a mining guy, metallurgical mining engineer, I think. But he didn't understand macro. So he said, well, according to this world, W should fall. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to help out the workers. I'm going to, Helena, can you see from that angle? And so I'm going to help out the workers. So basically, Hoover prevented W0 from falling. So Hoover prevented W0 from falling to W1. And what did he do inadvertently? Finish the sentence for me. In doing so, what did he do?
Created unemployment.
Yeah, created unemployment for sure. We talked about it. If I'm making bottled water and if I can't lower, Nick works for me, I can't lower his wages, I have to let him go. But in doing so, inadvertently, is this spelling right? Doing so, he completely demolished. Yeah. What?
Employment to classical model.
Wow, who said that? Thank you, Megan. Demolished the fundamental assumption of the classical model. Finish the sentence for me, Megan. While I have some water.
Because no, I understand.
And
Of change in P equals change in W.
Matthew, finish the sentence for me, please. Zaki, finish the sentence for me, please. Finish the sentence for me, please. Greg.
Change in P doesn't equal the same line.
And ushered in. Yes. Who was that? Dan, of course. Dan, thank you. And ushered in, perfect, Dan, thank you. And ushered in the Keynesian paradigm. So unbeknownst to them, unbeknownst to the policymaker. So he didn't even realize what was happening. Am I amplifying?
No.
Yeah, sometimes turning it on actually helps. Sorry. And so unbeknownst to the policymakers, we have gone into a paradigm shift. Keep in mind, remember that P falls, W is not allowed to fall from last class. Remember that all that stuff? W falls, P falls, W doesn't fall, labor demand, grid, all those assumptions. That's all. So when we did the Keynesian model in class, we had baked in this policy from Hoover. When we had P falling, P changing, W not changing last class, that was this. This is second. And so, unbeknownst to them, he just destroyed the DNA, the motherboard of the classical model. And suddenly now they are in this paradigm. Keynesian aggregate supply. So they are wrong-footed. They're the Keynesian, they don't know it. Actual model. And so model they thought they were in. And here we are. This is AD1. AD1. P1. And so an innocuous mistake, well-meaning guy, people cheered when he did this mistake number one. Oh, he cares about us. What a great man. Look at him. He's insisting that Langdana not reduce Nick's wages. Well, as you pointed out, now I'm going to let Nick go. So here we are, they're looking here, but they're actually there. It's like, they started off in an Italian restaurant, but somewhere down the line it became an Indian restaurant. And they are still going to order spaghetti and meatballs and pasta, which you would never do in an Indian restaurant, as you know. You, by the way, never, just as a friendly tip, you never ask for naan bread. Have I talked about this? No? So when you go in, you like Indian food, just say naan, because naan means bread. So when you say naan bread, the waiters are going, oh God. So just say naan. And don't say chai tea. Chai means tea. So you just said tea. And so back in the kitchen, they're going, oh, your chai tea. Be cool. Right? And I would like some tips from you about what not to say. Now I got it right. Just ask for a pie. Go for a pizza, just say large pie. Never say cheese, pizza, that's for out-of-towners. Large pie, you walk out. Or a slice. My brother from New Zealand said, but you didn't say what kind of slice. I said, just say slice. Be cool. Learn from me.
Just a random question, but in the 20s, the Federal Reserve also lowered rates. They got involved with them. But didn't that affect this more than?
Wow. I'm coming to that, Dan. The Federal Reserve then was emasculated, zero mojo. So I'm coming to that. Very mistake number 3.
Oh, okay.
So here we are. So now what happens is, stay with me now. So suddenly, this is step 3, step 2. So now unemployment increases, C bar and I bar plunge further. And shockingly, Y falls to Y low. So they think they're in here. So this is move number, this was move 1. This is move 2. Let's change colors. This is move 2. This is move to C bar and I bar down further as unemployment increases. This is P2. And so they're looking at this thing. They still think they're in an Italian restaurant. But what's happened is, whoa, in reality, this is the reality here. So here we are, this is move 2. This is P2. This is C bar down, I bar down. And look at this, Y low. You know, so this is Y earlier. So this is now the economy has contracted and they can't figure out what's going on. They're looking at this diagram. How did Y fall? And so this should be Y natural. They're going, how did Y fall? How is the economy contracting? How are we getting unemployment? There should be no unemployment. It should be the natural rate, N0. This should be Y0. How is it falling? Because they're an antagonist. They don't. Keynes came in later, years later, or 3-4 years later on, and told them, guys, this model's gone. Throw it out the window. Look out the window, speaking of windows. There's unemployment. This is the model. There's been a paradigm shift. Poor Hoover, he meant well. And I told you, he was so traumatized. He left, I told you about Chile, right? He took his whole family to Chile and he stood in water all day. I told you that. And so Y falls to Y low, and as Y falls, tax revenues fall. So please understand, T is tax revenues, and this is in one of those cases in the book I asked you to read, is equal to T times Y. So T is equal to Ty. So this is the tax rate. It's a percentage. This is national income. And this is the dollars. So do not confuse, this is dollars. Tax revenue. So do not confuse tax revenues with tax rates. So this is, so T is TY, it's 30% of 100, so T is $30. So basically, that's the tax revenues, the tax base. So do not confuse tax rates with tax revenues, okay? So what happens to tax revenues? So as Y falls, so basically as national income falls, the tax base falls. And what happened to the budget deficit when the tax base falls?
Increases.
So step number 3, budget deficit starts to increase. So as the tax base, so it makes sense, right? Mix out of work, a whole bunch of people out of work, unemployment is increasing, and this is cascading. So as tax base falls, as tax revenues, capital T, also known as the tax base, fall, G minus T now is greater than 0. What is G minus T from our very first class?
Deficit.
That's your budget deficit. So therefore, we got a budget deficit. So they completely freaked out because in their world, what's happening? Y cannot fall. It has never fallen. They grew up with this model. It was almost, it's not even like, oh, there's a choice. They have never seen this. You know, this is all they grew up with. This has yet to come. And so they freaked out. A deficit? You're not supposed to have a deficit. Oh my God. This whole notion of sustainability, multiplier effect, G being good, you know, that's coming later. And so mistake number 2, what do you think? That they panicked? Mistake number 2, don't look at the book, stay with me. They panicked. They panicked and did what? Raise taxes. And just think about it. Raise taxes in an economy that's collapsing. We know immediately what's going to happen, right? C-bar, I-bar is going to be a just flatliner, yes? And you know, to us, that this little discussion right now is the most, it's a quick click. It's not even a deep click discussion. But outside this room, that's a deep click discussion. You know, this is unfathomable to most people, many people outside this room. So here we are, and they raised taxes. There's all kinds of detail in the book, something like 26% maybe to 63%.
Wow.
And then the corporate tax, business taxes from 16 to 19. So they went ape. What does that do in this diagram?
That's
Yes,
80 lower.
Nick, thank you. And so here we are, here we go. Back to the races. Mistake 2. This is step 3. Increase in tax rate. C-bar and I-bar down further. B3. And so, therefore, IS pivots clockwise and shifts down as C-bar and I-bar fall, and therefore aggregate demand to the left. And this is move number 3. So now you should be able to do this virtually, right? ISLM up here. So up here virtually, IS is collapsing. Bending over. And please understand little digression here. Are you with me? You're hanging there with me, folks? So we're in the middle of mistake 3. Let's finish mistake 3. So they just didn't do this. They also decreased government spending. So they raised taxes. So basically, mistake 3 continued. But now they decreased G, if you can
Mistake
believe
3
that.
or 2?
So we're still in 3. 3B, if you like, 3A, 3B. So, and in addition to increasing taxes, they also decrease G. Can you show me what that would look like? So they were just determined, because remember, they didn't know about a multiplier effect. They didn't know about sustainability of deficits. You might as well have been speaking a different language that they had never heard before. So what would happen if you decrease G? Let's finish this diagram here. So look at this one here. This one, oh, wrong color. Blue. This is taxes. This is 3. This is P3. Look at this. Y, very low. So the economy is convulsing. So they're staring at that diagram going, huh, why shouldn't change? And all along, wham, 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 it's getting worse and worse and worse. So this is the reality of taxes. That's what they thought. Show me government spending. What decrease in G? What happens in this diagram? Sorry, Jessica, you have your hand up.
No, it's fine. I was just curious in terms of if you thought, if you thought that he didn't put in the price floor or the minimum wage, if essentially wages would have fluctuated? Like, are you, I mean, who knows, right, at that
Well,
point,
yeah,
right?
the whole
Like-
paradigm, because you're torn off, the DNA is gone. That was the fundamental assumption that gave you this.
So that
The-
decision-
The moment you took that away,
Yeah, yeah.
you know.
And then the other thing is the formula for the aggregate demand curve and the classical side the same as the formula?
Yes.
Okay,
Because the parents of the aggregate demand are IS and LN, and nothing's happened to those.
yeah, okay,
The aggregate supply comes from production function labor market, and
Yeah.
that's the action. So come on, show me decrease in G here. Yes, there. Here, this is decrease in G. So this is, let's call it 3B. And P4, decrease in G. And look what actually happened. My God, it's getting worse and worse and worse. Why? Very, very low. 3B. So this is P4. This is decrease in G. The economy is convulsing. And it's only mistake two. So basically, we've changed prices, or we removed the wage floor, then we did taxes, then we did G, and let's do mistake number 3. There's 2 more mistakes coming. But before we talk about that, what was this G? What was this G? There was no G. Remember, there was no Keynes at this time. So what kind of G are we talking about here at this point? Sorry? Yes, yes. So thank you, Dan. So basically, this was benefits to the World War I veterans. These were veterans who were blinded by nerve gas, mustard gas actually, and so they had benefits coming to them. So those benefits were postponed. That was the G. And so what happened is they all went on strike. They all put on their old World War I uniforms, showed up in Washington, and I'll send you the video tonight or tomorrow. It's jaw-dropping. And there was a huge tent city where the mall is, Washington. And so they were protesting, they wanted the money, which they were promised. That was the G that was caught, was cancelled. And this was the first global media event. The whole world was watching this. And so this went on for a while, and then the government was going to come up with a new deal, the next day. Then they were going to go into recess. The Congress was going to go off on vacation. The night before, somebody threw a bottle at a policeman. Hit him on the ear, he started bleeding. The cops tried to rough up these veterans. These are veterans from World War I. So the veterans beat up the cops, Washington City cops. I mean, they've been dealing with, Spandaus and World War I battlefields. So, morning comes, and here we are. Over that night, General MacArthur talks to Hoover about the situation, and Hoover says, this is getting out of hand. And MacArthur says, let me deal with it. And Hoover says, yeah, but General, just be careful, don't burn the tent city, just be gentle, these are veterans. And MacArthur goes, yes. And MacArthur is there, Patton is there. And so remember, at this time, in that part of that last century, all generals wanted to be like Napoleon. Because remember, Napoleon famously, when the French Revolution happened, there was a counter-revolution. And the whole French Revolution was in jeopardy. So Napoleon quickly goes in, and these guys who are trying to throw off the revolutionaries, he blows them away, literally. He's an artillery officer, so he plants these cannon in front of this protesting bunch of people, and he packs the cannon with grape shot, which is like a giant shotgun, and blows them away. And he famously said, there's nothing like it's called grape shot, it's like a massive shotgun that shreds you. And he said famously, there's nothing like a whiff of grape shot to clean the air. And so all generals from during that era, grape shot, They all wanted to be Napoleon. So here comes MacArthur. So MacArthur tells Hoover, yeah, I'll deal with it. He shows up the next morning in full dress uniform, and the protesters see cavalry. I'm not making this up. Lined up. And they thought, hey, it's a parade. These are soldiers, fixed bayonets. There were 4 tanks. By the way, we didn't make tanks then, so they were Peugeots, French tanks. And so they were, hey, it's a parade. Wrong. It was a cavalry charge. And I'll send you the video. And they were, the cavalry, MacArthur charges them, the tanks charge them, 30 are run over and killed. And it was eerily, so when I saw January 6th, it looked exactly like that same scene, but in reverse. Smoke, the Capitol Dome, I'll send you the video, you look at it and go, my gosh, it's the reverse. The cops are the bad guys, the protesters are the good guys, exactly a mirror image. And so the whole planet sees this. These are our own veterans. And the MacArthur's, he was told not to destroy the tent city. He goes over the bridge, burns down the tent city. They have their medals in there, they have the paraphernalia from World War I, burns it down. And there's a famous scene of Hoover in his pajamas, looking from the White House, seeing the flames, pulling the curtain, and going to bed. The great leaders move to the fire, average leaders move away from the fire. So that's that night. Next morning, they sent this guy called, I'll let you look up his name. There was a World War I veteran who saved Patton. Patton was there. So they sent him over, and important, when you see the video, remember his name, because I'm probably going to ask you that. And so they sent this veteran to Patton because he saved Patton's life in World War I. Patton was caught between the lines under machine gun fire. This guy pulls him out. So he says, Patton, you saved his life, man. Go tell him to stop, to stop destroying our tents till we get our stuff. We'll leave. So Patton goes up. So this guy, his name is Joe Angelo. So Joe Angelo goes up to Patton and says, General, it's me. Your guy who pulled you out from World War I. And General Patton looks at him and says, looks to his soldiers and says, get that creature out of my sight. All these guys we lionize, that's the day they didn't do well. And so that's all destroyed. C-bar collapses. And so here we are, after this scene, what happens is, it decreases, and C-bar and I-bar now in free fall. So here we go, massively, it's collapsing completely. Unemployment soars. Not yet. It's still going to get a lot worse. And here comes mistake number 3. So mistake 1 was the price floor. Mistake 2 was like GMT. Mistake 3, the Fed. And Dan, that was your question. So 2 more mistakes to go. Stay with me. So basically the banks started failing. So what you have here is, there were runs on banks. So mistake 3, there were runs on banks. What's a run on a bank?
Vast withdrawals.
Yeah, people are actually running to the bank. Remember in It's a Wonderful Life? The scene, has anyone seen It's a Wonderful Life? You remember that scene? So people run to the bank because there was no FDIC, your deposits were not safe, you could lose your life savings. So you actually run, pull your money out before the bank closes its doors. If the bank closes its doors, you're gone. There's a big crowd, there's a riot outside, your money's gone. So there are runs on banks, and as you pull out your money from a bank, what happens to the bank? Banks fail. And banks failed, and there were more runs. And finally, there were 40%, 40, of all the banks died, failed. And so people were pulling their money out because there was no FDIC, there was no guarantee. They were hiding it in newspapers. They were burying it in mason jars in their backyards. The generation is gone now, but all the stories, I have hundreds of stories, how they would hide the money, pull it out just in time. So the banks failed, and what you have here is national money supply fell by almost 33%. So M decreased by 33%. Can you imagine this? Massive liquidity crisis. Massive liquidity crisis. No money in the system. What does this remind you of? So this money is being taken out of the economy, it's parked somewhere else. Which diagram comes to mind? We've taken this money out of the economy.
Carry trades? Outflow. On capital?
Yeah.
Carry
No, it's the
trades?
end.
Which diagram is coming to mind? Sorry, I can't hear you with the masks.
Flight to safety? Flight to safety?
Yeah.
I don't know what it's called, but there were like circles.
Wow.
With the money flowing, and then there was the pool. of money.
Yes.
box off to the
Jessica.
right, yeah.
Yes, Jessica, thank you. That's this thing here. Remember that thing? And so there we are, parked M now, parked in idle loanable funds. Here we are, out of the economy, out of the system. So here comes mistake number 3. What should the Fed have done at this point in time? The economy is screaming for liquidity. Money is pulled out, it's mattresses. What should the Fed have done? What?
Increase the money
Yes,
supply.
the Fed should have provided liquidity, should have helped the economy out. Here comes, break this down, mistake number 3. Fed should have provided liquidity, which is a fancy term for increased M, to an economy begging, let's get dramatic here, for liquidity. So what did the Fed do? Dan, this is for you. Fed did nothing, but the Fed, Andrew Mellon was the Fed chairperson, did nothing. And the book I described this as, this is the big mistake. In the book I described this as, the Fed did nothing. Its silence was terrifying. Normally the Fed should be jumping and doing QE, like we did with the COVID, increasing M. 48 billion, like we did in the subprime crisis. They did nothing. The Fed silence was terrifying. Why? Any guesses? Twinkle?
I was just saying, did they even have a designated role at this point?
They had a very weak role. They were emasculated. There was zero mojo. Feds, by the way, back. We have mojo again. Everyone's hanging on to their nerves. Yeah, listening to every little thing from Jay Powell. What you have here is Mellon was a deflationist. This is a model that he believed in. Basically, remember, everybody is in this model, okay? They haven't seen the diagram. They're just like, what is going on? Why is Y falling? How did we get a budget deficit? What happened to the tax base? Why is there unemployment? This hasn't yet happened. They haven't yet discovered this. So Mellon was a deflationist. What Mellon believed is that inflation is the cause of all evil. And he said, this is pure evil. This is good. I needed to go a little bit lower because in his mind, nothing was going to happen to Y. You know, he hasn't yet figured out that it's not like this anymore. He's still ordering the meatballs. He's still ordering the eggplant parm. He still thinks he's an Italian restaurant. He doesn't understand that the eggplant parm was made 3 years ago and it's frozen in the bag. They're going to microwave it, which is what happens in an Indian restaurant when you order Italian food. And so what you have here is, he said, wait, we need more, a little bit more. He wanted it to fall to pre-World War I levels. So he did nothing. So here we go. Here we are, mistake 3M. And here we are, P5, deflation. We're hitting the bottom, folks, minus 25%. Prices have fallen, collapsed. And he's still saying, lower, lower, a little bit more, a little bit more. I want 1914 prices before World War I. Keep going. And what happened here in this diagram when he did that? Yes, there we are. This is decrease in M. And here we go P5, Great Depression. And here we are Y, Great Depression. The economy collapsed by minus 30%. Minus 30, got all the numbers in the chapter. Minus 30%. 1 in 4 workers unemployed. And there's one more mistake yet to come. If you can believe this. This is mistake 3. And so there's a conspiracy theory which says that Mellon was a major art collector. So he was waiting for the Monets and the Renoirs to keep falling. The National Gallery in Washington, that's his collection. So the seed collection for our National Gallery is Mellon's collection. So there's a conspiracy theory, if you will, that says he just wanted the art to keep falling. Oh yeah. A little bit more, 1940, yeah, a little bit more. There. And now we are done. 1 in 4 unemployed. Devastation. And mistake 4 is about to come. So at conferences, even in economics, macro conferences, even today, there's a whole session in the Great Depression. And today, economists still argue which mistake was the biggie. To me, how does it matter which was the big one? They were made, it's over. Mistake 3, so Milton Friedman and Anna Schwartz, and this is in my book, they wrote the book called The Monetary History of the United States, and Milton Friedman said this was it. The M, mistake number 3, that was the biggie. Always provide liquidity. When the stock market's melting down, throw money at it. Provide liquidity, don't just stand around looking at it. So we learned that lesson, but so he says 3. Many others think it was mistake 4, which is coming up next. Mistake 4, trade war. And I've shown you, luckily, earlier on, tariffs. We did a little digression on that. Smoot-Hawley tariffs. What was this? Does anyone know? Some of you have done economics before. Smoot and Hawley were the 2 congressional sponsors who pushed these tariffs through. What's a tariff? The tariff is a tax on imports. So, and we've done this briefly in class. Come on, folks. Come on, Mark, help me here. So the thinking here was that it's the Europeans who are stealing our jobs. All this competition on electrical appliances coming from Europe and machinery coming from Europe. Keep those out. Buy American. So they put a tariff, Smoot and Hawley were the congressional sponsors. And you know, they were sweet guys. These were good people. But they had small engine rooms. The most dangerous kind of people with small engine rooms. They sleep well at night. These were good people. You know, they liked children. They liked small animals. Today they would recycle. You know, in our definition, they probably would have 4 or 5 vaccinations. But they didn't know macro. And so tax on imports, approximately, average tax 51% on all things coming into America. And just like I told you in class, I signed up. There were 200 economists who begged Trump not to do it. And as I told you in class, they got my name wrong. Instead of Farouk Langdana, it became Langdana Farouk, which is good. The bad guys still can't find me. You know? But there, 4 or 3 Rutgers economists begged the government then in the New York Times, please don't do this. You never win. Because now, what do the Europeans do to us?
Retaliated.
Retaliated. What do you think is going to happen? And so there was a tariff war. And so, tariff war. So they tariffed our goods. Suddenly our exports started collapsing. And so what you had is global trade, or if you added up all the imports and all the exports of the whole planet, it's one of those rare times on this planet that everything shut down. So global trade approximately came to 0. It was actually under 6 million, the whole planet, everything like boom, 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 shut down. So many believe it was mistake 4, the trade war, that caused the Great Depression. Some believe it was mistake 3. It was the whole thing. And so what you have here is unemployment, 1 in 4 unemployed, GDP minus 30%, inflation minus 25%. They were actually destroying the orange crop. They were pouring lime and acid on orange crop. They were pouring milk to artificially reduce the supply. And artificially, when you reduce the supply, what happens to the price?
Goes up.
Yeah, so push the price up. So they were destroying thousands of oranges, food, agriculture to artificially push the prices up. And so devastation, paradigm shift. You know, you're making policy looking at the wrong paradigm. All this was happening here. Questions, comments?
What percentage of banks did you say failed?
33, it was generally the number you see, but I'm thinking close to 40%. There was something called a bank holiday, where they said everyone's panicking, let's shut the banks down for a week. So we had this bank holiday, and when the holiday ended, thousands more banks just died during the bank holiday. Questions, comments? And it was later on that Keynes came along and said, all right guys, that model is gone. Don't you get it? It's this model. And what you should do, stop obsessing on the G. Good G is a good thing. Have G. Have M. Increase M. You're in the Keynesian world. That's how you move it on. But have a sustainable G. That's the key. He didn't use the word sustainable. He said have G. Once the economy picks up, stop the G. Let the private sector take over. But you need to jumpstart it. But in this role, there was nothing. This role, there was no role for G. G was not on this picture, or M. Questions, comments? So can this happen again? Let's look at the mistakes. What do you think? So let's look at the mistakes. Not increasing M. This is, the mistakes are in black. When we make this mistake again, what's been our track record with that?
No, we do that a lot.
Sorry, Nick?
We there's no issue
No
increasing
issue.
M.
So we got this one down, right, Nick?
Yeah.
And so, we will not make this mistake again. In fact, on the contrary, huge M. Recently. Did you see that article I sent you in my announcements where they are slamming modern monetary theory in the second last paragraph? Modern MMT is gone, so you can throw that away now. Alessandro Ocasio-Cortez, Bernie Sanders, that whole MMT, take it, throw it away. Biden can't spend anymore. That's good. So we won't make this mistake, right, Nick? Clearly. The problem is we might go to the other extreme, increasing M 160 billion a month. Okay, let's look at the other one. Trade war. Will we make this mistake again?
Well, we are doing it.
We did.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, we were doing that.
Sadly, this mistake being made over again. How about raising taxes and decreasing G in crises? What about this one?
Biden is talking about increasing taxes.
So I'm decreasing G.
That is increased G.
So partly we may partly do this. Taxes may go up.
Does it matter if it's not in response to a crisis though? Like he's not raising taxes. I mean,
Another question mark. We're not
Yeah.
sure what's finally gonna happen with the whole budget, right? But G may go up, at least that was the plan, right? So ambiguous, we don't know. But Japan, for example, this mistake over and over and over again, 4 times in 10 years, raising taxes just when they were waking up. So what do you think? What do we have today? We have something today we didn't have then. We have unemployment insurance. We didn't have it then. So we have today and today. We come here so we don't have to strain. Trying my best. Where is it here? Today we have unemployment benefits. And today we have safety nets. FDIC, whatever that is today, in quotes, unemployment, benefits, COVID relief, etc., Medicare, Medicaid. So we have safety nets today, we didn't have those then. So that's a good thing, I'm thinking. And what else do we have today that we didn't have then? Come on, folks. What do we have today we did not have at that point in time? Ruchi,
The Keynesian model.
yeah, the Keynesian model. Well, we have the Keynesian model today. We know the framework. Something we have today, Neil, Frank, Solomon.
Globalized economy.
Yeah. Come on, guys. Technology.
Minimum wage.
Sarah, come on. What? Dana? Pooja? I don't know who's speaking with the mask on, so.
We're a safe haven?
Yeah.
Maybe the back cost of
Yeah. Yeah. She said that, safe haven. Come on, folks. What do we have today that we didn't have then? What? Bonds? Yeah.
Social security.
Social security. Come on, folks. Lina. What? Internet? Yeah. By the way, do you know that Ukrainians built WhatsApp? No, only I can do yeah. We're not allowed. Two guys, they went to Facebook over and over again, and finally, they just wanted 50 grand. Finally, when Facebook bought them, like 20 billion. Come on, guys, what do we have today that we didn't have then? Hindsight? Who is this? Who is speaking? Mysterious voices. Dr. Victoria? Yeah. Yes, this book. Pooja. No final exam for you. I'm trying to give you a hint here. Thank you. We have the book. So I'm going to tell you a low-powered, interesting story. Have you seen Wizard of Oz? Yes, no? Did you know that that movie is all about macro? Did you know that? So yes, and shocking as it may be, it's pure macro. So you know what Oz stands for? Oz, O-Z? It's an ounce of gold. Who said that? Are you? So you know this whole deal?
It's about like the gold and silver standard.
Wow. Keep talking.
That's pretty much, it was like a whole opinion piece on that.
Wow, well, I got some interesting news for you. So, the cyclone, it's just all macro, so please understand, when viewers went to that movie back then, they were like relating all this to macro. We not unlike us, we were kind of clueless, to us the wizard's the wizard. Oh, no. They had all, they could relate. They go, oh, did you figure that one out? Oh, yeah, I got that one. So we are all clueless. I was clueless. So the cyclone is the stock market crash of 1893, the banking panic, when the market crashed. Oz is an ounce of gold and silver. The currency was tied to precious metals then. The yellow brick road is the gold standard. So the big debate then was, should the currency be tied to gold or silver? Or what ratio? And the states in the west of America, they wanted more silver because silver was mined there. So they wanted the silver ratio. So there was actually a Silverite party. There's a political party called the Silverite Party. Dorothy's slippers were not red. That was just for the movie. So those ruby red slippers, they were silver. Again for the Silverite ratio. Toto the dog. Any guesses? That dog? Teetotalers. There was a prohibitionist party. So those were the teetotalers, Toto.
Huh.
Yes. Dorothy. Dorothy was naive, spunky, feisty, likable, sweet, but feisty. That's the American people. The Scarecrow was the US farmer. The Tin Man were the industrial workers. The Cowardly Lion. The Cowardly Lion was a guy called William Jennings Bryan. Did you know this? So last year I was doing this class on Zoom, and somebody, one of the little stamps, those postage stamps on Zoom last year, same class, this guy exploded. He said, well, yeah, and he went on for like 5 minutes. He did his master's on William Jennings Bryan. I have no clue who this guy was. So the student in the class did his whole master's dissertation on him. And apparently this guy was a wannabe politician who talked big and who always acted like he was going to come through, but he always failed. He always fell on his face. And so the Cowardly Lion is that. And so moviegoers at that time were going, you got that, right? That was William Jennings. Oh yeah, I got that one. That was obvious. That's how they would talk. So we're missing on that. The Wizard was President McKinley. That was a straight shot. He was evasive, hard to pin down. He wanted everything for everybody. He was a desk guy. The Munchkins. Can you guess who the Munchkins were? What? Yeah. Immigrants. So I would be a Munchkin. So Munchkins were immigrants. The Wicked Witch of the East was industrial and banking interests. She stole the Tin Man's heart. So the banking sector destroyed the industrial workers. And the Wicked Witch was killed by a falling house. The housing market collapsed. So it's all there, guys. It's all macro. Sorry? So now when you see the movie again, yeah, Sarah.
Who is Glinda?
Who?
Glinda, the Good Witch.
I don't have that in my notes.
You have to find that out.
Look it up for me, please.
Okay.
Yeah, who was the Good Witch? I have no idea. Okay, so I have a homework for you. This is due on the last day, on the final exam day. So please listen carefully. So this is on the 27th. You are supposed to go and look at this picture, which actually was a gift to me from the class of 2012 or somebody is outside in the lounge. You can go online. It's an iconic photograph of the Great Depression. It's called Migrant Mother. So look at carefully. This is your last home. This is homework for the last day. Migrant Mother. It's outside in the lounge. And be introspective. Tell me what you see. Because the whole point of this exercise, I actually built this exercise. There was something from the GE Corporation for a unique class exercise. So I built this and I won that award many years ago. So that's where this comes from. So the whole point of this exercise is to be introspective. Tell me what you see, because I want you to understand, because in class it's so easy to look at these colored lines on the board and go, oh, that was too bad. And then you go out and you buy a $7 latte. What sense does that make? So, I just want you to understand the devastating power of bad macro. It's sometimes worse than a bad war, bad macro, as we know. And so be introspective. Tell me what you see in the picture. Do not, listen carefully, do not give me macro. Please. I do not want her IS curve has collapsed. She lost, C-bars collapsed because of the stock market. That poor lady has no stock. Trust me. And do not give me anything from a website. I don't want you to say she was collecting peas and then she sold her tires. I can see that. So do not give me anything from a website. It should be introspection. Some people have their kids look at it. I got some of my best answer from people's kids. One kid wrote, "This woman looks like she's never smiled in her life." Another guy in my class, he's actually now at the C level at Pfizer. He's a doctor, and he used to work for Doctors Sans Borders, Doctors Without Borders. Yes, Victoria? And so his answer was just so poignant. He said, "Oh, I know her. I met my grandmother. She's this woman with those kids outside. I saw her in Bosnia. I saw her in Rwanda. I met her in Rwanda. I was there in Afghanistan because that's where he was." Absolutely poignant. So some people write poetry, some people write 5 pages, some people write 3 sentences. Some people will not get it. So 15% of you will not get it or refuse to get it. I don't know what you're supposed to look at. There's some woman who looks really upset and kind of freaked out. I don't know what you're looking for. Fine. You can't get wine from a bottle of beer. That's okay. You know? So, show me what you've got, and that's due on the last day of the class. Introspection, no micro, please. Let's take 5 minutes. You bring your food, and then